Friday show on the Hockey Talk Show. Nice to be here with you on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, at Hockey Talk Show on Twitter, Instagram, and everywhere else. Of course, for those of you listening on the podcast, on those treadmills, you healthy bunch of people, you. And at hockeytalkshow.com. Houston Flames, is this a reality? Is this something crazy? No. The answer is no. 631-438-1768. 631-438-1768. Call into the Hockey Talk Show if you want to be a part of the whole damn thing. We usually do some advanced warning. Couldn't really do that tonight, so hopefully you guys are along for the ride. Lucy, welcome to the podcast show web thing talk, whatever the hell this is. Welcome aboard. Houston Flames, we're talking relocation, 2 shows in a row on the Hockey Talk Show, and that's because Gary Bettman spoke up and made a little bit of news. And when the commissioner of the National Hockey League talks and makes some news, I mean, anything he says, if he sneezes the wrong way, we're going to be talking about it here on the Hockey Talk Show. The whole world will stop, and we'll be talking about it on the Hockey Talk Show. So thanks for being a part and along for the ride. Any comments you have, go ahead and shoot me those questions, comments on the Facebook and YouTube chat. Hi, Lucy. And you can also call in on the show if you want to get in here live and mix it up with me. That's certainly more than welcome. It's 631-438-1768. That's 631-438-1768. To our knowledge, the only live call-in hockey talk show that exists on the internet. Now, that is scary in itself because it's 2017 and we've had the internet for a whole bunch of time and nobody has figured out a way to do a live hockey call-in talk show. This is bizarre. Can we really be the only one? When I had the idea, I'm like, there's no way the Hockey Talk Show is available. If I go to hockeytalkshow.com, I'm sure I'll find somebody cool there that's been doing this for a really long time. And bupkis, nothing. We're the first ones. I think it's crazy. I think the Houston Flames are crazy. Ball Peach is back. That's my man. He likes it. I think a couple other people might like it just fine, too. I want to go back in time for just a little bit here, and I want you guys to think about something. When the National Hockey League was in Atlanta, the idea, think about a year before we got the Winnipeg Jets back, the idea of the Winnipeg Jets returning to the National Hockey League was so foreign. It just could not happen, will not happen. I can go back and probably pull clips for you of Gary Bettman going, no, the Flames, we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure out this. We're going to figure out that. We're going to get the situation right. Ownership this, ownership that, blah, 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 so on and so forth. I don't foresee it happening. I mean, they really went back to Winnipeg begrudgingly. And it might sound nuts for you to think that Calgary can lose their franchise and the Houston Flames, but it's no more crazy than how we were just before the Winnipeg Jets came back and moved from Atlanta. It really genuinely isn't. I mean, you're looking at the same exact situation here. Gary Bettman has turned things up a notch with his latest comments, and I'll read them to you so you can be the judge. And if you want to phone in, that's 631-438-1768. General manager meetings. Quickly on that, the managers meet all the time. They do it now. They do it in March again. This is really just like a preamble, like before the holidays. You'll get some rumor rumblings. I'm sure we'll talk about that more on Monday's show, or maybe if we get to sneak one in here over the weekend. You know, they get together, they start talking about stuff, the little pre-holiday thing, couple of trade discussions, and then they go on and they go do their holiday things, and then March comes around, and that's really it. I know that they're really happy with the game right now. That was the synopsis I got. Not too much to cover there, so we'll just move on quickly to what Gary Bettman said. But they're all up in Montreal because they're having these general manager meetings, and that's kind of where the league is right now. League kind of moves around from time to time. They're primarily in New York, but they have the Toronto offices, and they were just in Sweden for the Global Series, and you know they'll move to wherever the I forget where the outdoor game is this year. And then when they have the Coors Light outdoor games, they'll move there. Like the whole operation just kind of moves around, and when you have that happen, a lot of times you get media availability, and that's what we have in this situation. So the fact that the owner of the Houston Rockets came out yesterday and he confirmed, we talked with the National Hockey League. We had a really good meeting. This is a long process. That was pretty cool to see. But all right, where does it go? We're kind of where we are everywhere. We're where we are with Seattle. We're where we were with Vegas before they got a franchise. They're talking. They're, presenting their case. The National Hockey League is exploring the possibilities. Gary Bettman likes to be courted. That's one thing I know about Gary Bettman. He likes to be courted. He doesn't like to relocate because in relocation, a lot of the times the league is looking to move a team somewhere. Even if that city is accepting, or even if the city is pursuing them, relocation is just bad. They're doing the move. Gary likes to be the one to say, okay, you can have a team, which is totally understandable. Amidst this Houston story now that broke yesterday in a big, big way. Brett, welcome to the show, man. Bettman is a clown. I don't know why people hate Gary Bettman. I think he's been phenomenal for the game. I can't for the life of me understand. I mean, in no way, shape, or form is Roger Goodell a bad commissioner for the National Football League, yet people hate him. I understand the fans hating him. I totally get that. But now the owners, Jerry Jones is trying to move Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell has made them all even bigger billionaires. I will never understand that move whatsoever. I just don't get it. But anyway, back to the National Hockey League and Gary Bettman. He's grown the game. I like him a lot. He still gets booed everywhere, which I think is just kind of a hilarious tradition that we just still do. I mean, if I'm in an arena, I'm going to boo Gary just because it's something you do. But I don't really not like the guy. Anyway, so amidst all this hubbub, Gary met with the Montreal Chamber of Commerce today, and he had the following to say, and I quote, "We believe in all of the places that we have franchises now. We think all of our markets are capable of supporting our clubs. We're not looking to threaten markets, but," love the but there is a certain inevitability if a club needs a new arena to stay competitive, to stay viable, and have stability, that if it can't, for whatever reason, get a new facility, then at some point ownership has to look at what options it may have. It's great to know that there are lots of places out there that are interested in having a franchise that don't, but we're not running around actively soliciting interest. We listen to whoever wants to come talk to us, and we are aware of the interest, but our preference is to have our franchises right where they are. Break it down a couple of things here. We're not running around actively soliciting interest. When the Atlanta Thrashers were in trouble, the league had to figure something out. Now, Winnipeg was there. They had an arena. Wasn't the optimal situation at 15,000 seats. They had ownership willing. They had a lot of things in place. It was a former market. They were more ready to go than Quebec was at the time. There was just so many things in Winnipeg's favor that the league had no choice but to let it go and let it happen. A little bit of a different situation. There have been cases where the league has had to go around and figure out, okay, what do we do if we can't make this happen? Happened in Carolina a little bit. I'm sure the Florida Panther, issue with, the empty seat issue is a big deal. Now it's happening in Ottawa. The league doesn't have to no longer go out and seek. They had Vegas courting them. They know they have Seattle courting them. Add Houston to the mix. When you start to get 3 and 4, you don't need 15 cities. When you start to get 3, 4, 5 cities that are interested in you, that's when you don't have to go running around and solicit. You don't have nothing to worry about, especially cities like Houston that have an arena that is basically ready to go. Seattle is a little bit of a different situation, as is Quebec being in Canada, and they love U.S. markets. Of course, we all know that. So that's one thing. We listen to whoever wants to come talk to us. That's basically how Vegas started. They handled the Vegas thing. Gary never really seemed interested in Vegas. He loved saying, well, let's see how they do. Let's see what their interest is. Let's see if they can get an arena. Let's see. Oh, they started a ticket drive. Let's see if they can sell the tickets. Oh, they sold the tickets. Okay. Well, let's see. You know, he likes to be courted. He likes to be courted. We think all of our markets are capable of supporting our clubs. We're not looking to threaten markets, but there is a certain inevitability if a club needs a new arena to stay competitive, to stay viable and have stability, that if it can't, for whatever reason, get a new facility, then at some point ownership has to look at what options it may have. Gary has laid down the groundwork for the Houston Flames in that one statement. He has laid down the groundwork. Now, the potential for Ottawa to relocate inside of Ottawa, get that downtown city. I know there's some flats, some apartment area that they're looking at that I think the government has to give them or make available for them to purchase. So there's a lot of red tape that comes with that for Ottawa, but that is a more promising situation than Calgary, where in Calgary, they are no longer seeking to get a new arena. That is not good. The Flames are not in a good situation right now. It was one thing when Don Cherry's out there shouting out, well, Ottawa needs to go to Quebec. It makes sense, Gary. And he points out Gary Bettman. That's one thing. It's another thing when ownership comes out and says, well, you know what? We're not looking for an arena anymore. A few significant things happen here with Calgary as well. If you're unaware of the situation with the Calgary Flames, the current mayor of the city of Calgary does not want to give them a new arena. Doesn't want them moving out of Scotiabank Saddledome. The Calgary Flames feel like they need to move out to be viable. The Calgary Flames politically, and again, Bettman doesn't get involved in this stuff, nor should he. He played this right. The Calgary Flames politically backed the challenging candidate. They went against the incumbent. The Calgary Flames candidate lost. That does not bode well for the Calgary Flames. When you back a guy and he loses, and the guy in there right now says you're not getting what you want, that really leaves you in a big space of nowhere. You are in just Sucksville when that happens to you. So that's what Calgary is looking at. Now, Bettman has come out and said, and I was surprised when he said this. He said this actually at the beginning of the hockey season. He came out and he said, the Calgary Flames used to write a check when it came to revenue sharing. Now they're cashing the check. What that means is the league has agreed to, as all leagues have, essentially, you know, in baseball, you have the luxury tax. In football, it's just a flat out sharing revenue league. I don't know what they do in the NBA, but I know they share revenue as well. You share revenue. Back in the day, it used to be the Rangers were awesome. You know, Chicago was making money. Toronto was making money, and all the other teams would suffer. And then, you know, the Rangers would go out and put these $70 million teams on the ice while, you know, the Islanders and the Devils had $16 million teams, and the league sucked back then. So through the collective bargaining agreements, they made it so that now the league, they all keep a good amount of their own money, but depending on who makes what, they average it out so that every team can be profitable in order to survive. And essentially what winds up happening is some teams that do super well, Montreal, Toronto, the Rangers, they cut a check and put it in the pot. And for the teams that really don't do all that well financially, Arizona, Florida, they get their end so that they can all sort of even out. Now, it's not it's just a percentage, but they've worked it out that it's enough that it works within the league. You know, the teams that are making a ton of money get to give up a little bit, but don't give up too much that it hurts them at the end of the day. And the other teams, you know, they get to come out so that it's a little even, or maybe they don't lose as much or whatever it is. So that's kind of the revenue sharing situation. What Bettman is saying is Scotiabank Saddledome in Calgary is so old, they can't make the money there. They can't make the revenue there. They went from a team that wrote the check to a team that cashed the check. Now that's saying something, especially about a Canadian franchise. Again, you have the national pastime of a country and they can't support one of the teams in one of their largest markets. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. It means that that arena is not pulling in the money that they really need. And this is a common thing that we've seen in the league. Like, arenas change. You need more luxury. Everything is more. PSLs in football, more, new. You got to figure out a way to make it work. It's no longer about just coming to see the game. There has to be a water slide for the kids and stores for the moms and, the killer steakhouse for the dads and all this crazy stuff. But you need all that to survive and to compete. And we've seen it rapidly throughout the entire world. Teams are building new facilities just to compete financially. It's what you have to do now to compete. It's sad, but it's true. 631-438-1768 to call in on the Hockey Show. I mean, it sucks to think that a city will put in all this money and build these beautiful facilities that are costing more and more, $200, $300, $400 million. And in 30 years, they're going to have to build another one. But that's kind of the reality of the situation. That's where we are in the sports world right now. But by the way, I think that the investments that these cities are making now are so much better because the technology, the architecture, the engineering is so much better. Back in the day, you look at the old arenas and stadiums, the Coliseum, Joe Louis, all these places, they weren't built with longevity in mind. They didn't know what we know now. The term sightlines is a relatively new thing. The fact that now you can see the ice surface while you're getting a hot dog is a big deal. It enhances the fan experience. Back in the day, I remember going to games when I was a kid. You expected to wait online for 20, 30 minutes just to go to the bathroom. And it sucked, but you did it anyway. Now, if you have to wait 10 minutes, it's time for a new arena, man. It's time for a new arena. Fans expect more, and they're paying more, so rightfully so. But you go from a team that was paying to now a team that is receiving that check, and it's a whole different ballgame, man. And the fact that they're no longer seeking an arena in Calgary, and the fact that their guy that they backed in the election lost, where does that leave the Calgary Flames? Leaves them looking to book hotels in Houston next season. That's where it leaves them. 631-438-1768. Ball Peach, I don't like the Flames as a name for Houston. I don't mind the Flames. I think a team should be able to pick their own name. But you got the Rockets. Rockets need fire to get up there. I kind of get it. You could put a lot of flames up on the top of that H. It could work. I wonder what they would name them. The minor league team was the Arrows. I like that name too. It's got to be something with flight. Should be the Houston Barbecue Ribs. That would be a team that I'd buy a lot of jerseys for. People are running around with those bacon suits nowadays. What's wrong with a barbecue rib on front of your hockey jersey? So what Bettman is doing here is he's laying the groundwork saying, what choice do other teams have? Now, this, believe me, this is a complicated chess game. Do I think that Gary wants the team to relocate? No, and he said that. He said the preference is to have their franchises where they are now. But he left the door open saying they have to do what they have to do. And if they want to move, then they can move. It's going to put a little bit more pressure. Let me tell you something about government, and I've dealt with it on a lot of different levels. I've seen it a lot in New York with the Islanders. I've seen it personally with my personal other business that I deal with. I have a lot of clients, that I deal with outside of the radio station that always are dealing with town ordinances. Politicians don't really like to do much. They like to kind of just continue to kick the can down the way. So until they force the local Calgary government to do something, nothing is going to get done. And I don't know what type of owners we got in Calgary, if they're impatient or not. But, I'll say this to the city of Calgary. You better watch what you do, because, again, and this is going by the New York Islanders. Again, for those of you new to the program, I used to work for the New York Islanders. I no longer do. I host a radio show on Long Island. I do a morning show. But take it from me. One day, the folks in the local government here on Long Island in the town of Hempstead woke up and took a look, and the New York Islanders were in Brooklyn. Okay. And a whole bunch of revenue, a whole bunch of tax incentives and ticket revenue and parking revenue, a whole bunch of that went walking down the road. That was it. In Long Island, it got super political. And you know what happened? Politicians got involved, super PACs got involved, and people started saying, we're going to give the Islanders their own arena. We're going to have to pay for that in tax money. Your taxes are going to go up if they build a new arena. So what did the people do? They went out and said, we don't want our taxes to go up. We're not going to build a new arena. But you know what happened? The Islanders left and they had to make up that revenue. And where did they make up that revenue from? People's taxes. Their taxes went up anyway. It was a foolish short-term move, and Calgary needs to really think about this long and hard. If the Flames need a new arena to compete, you better give it to them. You better give it to them. Lucy, what's your opinion on the Sharks? I like the Sharks a lot this season. I think they're doing really good things, despite the fact that they lost Patrick Marleau. You know, it's funny. There was this long dance where for a long time, as they were pulling C's off of people's jerseys left and right, Marleau and Jumbo Joe and all this, I thought that they were going to trade these guys. They were long rumored to trade these guys. You get the feeling that the San Jose Sharks didn't want these guys. And then all of a sudden, at a certain point, you were like, oh, wait a second. They really do need these guys. And I think the Sharks front office kind of realized that. But then they let Marleau go, which I understand. And I just thought, well, I wonder what this is going to do to affect them. And they're sitting third in the Pacific right now at 10-7. Not fantastic. And they're in a situation in the West where you have a lot of underachievers. Minnesota is underachieving right now. Calgary, Chicago, Anaheim, Dallas, Edmonton. There's 7 teams that are underachieving right now. You know, at some point, I think Chicago's going to get hot. At some point, Edmonton and McDavid, I have to think, are going to get hot. Anaheim at 8-7, that's an injury-laden team. If they get all their guys back and they get healthy, they're going to be a problem. But I like San Jose, +6 on the goal differential. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games, which means they haven't let the start of their season affect how they're playing right now. They're still playing some good hockey. 10-7. They're just behind the Vegas Golden Knights. I think San Jose is going to be in the mix. I picked them as a playoff team before the season. 17 games in, I say they're going to be a playoff team moving forward. They got goaltending. You know, they've got Jumbo Joe who's playing really well. Pavelski. They just got a good lineup through and through. I'd like to see. I want to say I'd like to see a little bit more out of them, but you know, Logan Couture and Pavelski, I think they should be a smidge higher than where they are at, but I'd have to really get the numbers in front of me to see that. Let me see where Couture is at. Couture is having a good season. 10 goals, 5 assists, 15 points in 17 games. Tomas Hertl, 3-7. Could be a little bit more scoring there. Joe's at 2-8. Jonas Dunskoy, which is my favorite name to say in the National Hockey League. He's at 5-3. Pavelski's at 4-4. They're having a good year, you know. I love Brent Burns. He hasn't scored yet this season, but I love him. And I love Joel Ward. I like teams that have their role guys in their roles. And Joel Ward is one of the best role guys. 3rd and 4th line dude. I like him a lot. Not the most impressive team in the West, though. That would be the St. Louis Blues. Yesterday, we talked about Mike Camilleri coming over in the trade for the Edmonton Oilers, and it was Oilers and Blues last night from Edmonton. And you think after they won 8-2, the Edmonton Oilers, and then they go out and they make a deal and they bring in Mike Camilleri, that would give them the spark, like, here's the run. Well, if it's going to give a spark, it did not happen last night. They lost by a score of 4-1. Now, St. Louis is amazing, 14-5-1 on the year, but Mike Camilleri didn't do a lot in his first game to contribute. Of course, nobody did. Ryan Strome scored the only goal. It was on the power play. Camilleri was on the ice. He had over 2 minutes in power play time, and he had 15 minutes on the ice playing in a third-line role. I like Camilleri big time in that third-line role. Hopefully he can get Strome going. He wasn't a direct assist. He had no points. He wasn't in on the Strome goal, but he was on the ice when it happened. So he finished the night even, despite the fact that the Oilers gave up 4 goals. So good for him on that aspect of it. He had 2 shots on goal, 4 hits. You know, I like Camilleri in that spot. Eric joining the show. Go Penguins. Good chat on the Facebook page tonight. Thanks everybody for chiming in. Believe it or not, I thought Camilleri would have been a good fit with the Penguins. Penguins are always looking to add, which is insane to me, seeing that they have Crosby, Malkin, and Kessel. The fact that they're still looking to add is just nuts. I love their supporting cast too. I love Carl Hagelin. I really love that Pittsburgh team. I mean, I love to hate them when my Isles play them, but as impartial hockey talk show host, God, you got to respect the way the Penguins are built, man. You gotta love them. Eric says they're going to find a way to go to the Cup this year or go win the Cup this year. Dude, I would love to call you crazy. I just can't do it. I think this is a dynastic team. Take that to your local elementary school and see if it's grammatically correct. I think this is the best chance we have at seeing a dynasty ever. We really do. McDavid gives you the best chance to see an Oiler dynasty down the road, but the way the Oilers are starting out, no bueno, baby. No bueno. I thought Camilleri would have been really good over there in Pittsburgh, but he goes to Edmonton and just no spark. No spark for the Edmonton Oilers last night. By the way, they just look flat and terrible. They just look flat and terrible. They don't look inspired. They don't look angry. They don't look like they have an edge. They don't look like a team that was picked for the playoffs that 20 games in is sitting at 7-10-2. They don't look like they're upset enough. You have a fluke goal from Cam Talbot early on where he was trying to play the puck on a power play behind his own net, and he coughs it up. St. Louis scores. There was another couple of deflections in front. It squeaked through them. That was 2. They never had an edge. They never looked upset. Did Usiokin get an assist last night? I didn't see that. Did he really? That's hilarious. Could you imagine? I sit here and predict that Edmonton won, and they're going to be far better with Camilleri, and Usiokin winds up taking off. Could you imagine? I'll have to quit the show. And speaking of St. Louis, and again, Lucy, to go to your point, the problem with the West this year and the problem for the San Jose Sharks and a lot of other teams is you're going to have to go through St. Louis. You're going to have to go through St. Louis if you want to get to the Cup final. That's going to be tough for Nashville. That's going to be tough for Los Angeles. And good on Winnipeg. Winnipeg, by the way, 7-1-2 in their last 10 games. They're 11-4. Winnipeg had 2 clunkers to start this season, and they're sitting second in the Central Division right now. That's unbelievable for Winnipeg. If you're a Winnipeg Jets fan, you got to be excited. They righted that ship, man. Connor Hellebuyck wound up being the answer, not Steve Mason. Hellebuyck, if you're Kevin Shovel-Day-Off, you'll take it. It don't really matter. You'll take it. The West looks tough, man, but St. Louis, 14-5-1. Dear Lord, that would be incredibly impressive if Tampa Bay wasn't sitting there 19 games into the season and having only lost 2. Think about that. The Tampa Bay Lightning have only lost 2 games in regulation so far this season. Pittsburgh, that is your problem. That's the Pittsburgh Penguins problem. The only thing in Pittsburgh's way as of right now is the Tampa Bay Lightning, because I don't think that Jersey would give Pittsburgh a problem. I think Columbus would. If the playoffs ended today, it'd be Jersey, Pittsburgh, Columbus, Tampa, Toronto, Ottawa, Islanders, and Washington. I don't think anybody is a serious threat to Pittsburgh outside of Columbus and definitely Tampa. And I think that Pittsburgh could beat Columbus. I don't know if Pittsburgh can beat the Tampa Bay Lightning if the Tampa Bay Lightning are totally healthy going into it. Eric, can we get rid of the Florida Panthers and give Texas a new team? Yeah, we were talking about at the start of the show that the Calgary Flames are seriously in trouble up there in Calgary, and that I think that might be the biggest option for the Houston market to get the Flames. I don't think that the NHL wants to relocate. I especially don't think they want to relocate in Canada. I especially don't think they want to relocate from Canada to the United States. I think that would be devastating. I think that would be devastating for the league. I just don't think that you can pull that off from a PR standpoint. I don't think you can sell that to Canada. I don't think you can do it. Canada's pissed right now that Arizona and Florida have a team, and there's not one in Quebec, and there's not one in Hamilton or a second one in the Toronto area. I mean, they're beyond pissed. They're beyond pissed about it. You watch every Canadian hockey talking head, and they're super pissed that the Arizona Coyotes and the Florida Panthers exist. I think the Panthers, I know there's not a lot of attendance there, but I think the Panthers are going to stay. I think Arizona might go eventually. I think Calgary has a good chance at going. I don't know where you go from here if you're Calgary. I mean, you're really looking at a stalemate. And the problem is when communication stops, that's scary, because I saw it with the Islanders. Communication stopped. They didn't get what they needed politically, and then all of a sudden, they were going to Brooklyn. When communication stops between both sides trying to figure it out, that's when one side starts talking secretly to somebody else. And that's a problem. Mark my words, at some point in the next couple of months, you'll hear the Calgary Flames owners talking with somebody else, whether it's another entity in Calgary or some other part of the town or some other private whatever, or Seattle or God knows what. You'll start to see those stories leaking out that Calgary Flames owners, blah, 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 we're talking with whomever. But I'm super disappointed in Edmonton that Camilleri wasn't a spark for them. By the way, Braden Shen, 2 goals in that game last night for the St. Louis Blues. He's been a huge part of their killer season so far. Braden Shen has looked damn good for the St. Louis Blues. 2 goals last night, 1 assist, 3 points, 18 minutes on the ice, played 5 minutes of power play time. As far as relocation trades go, Braden Shen may be one of the greatest relocation trades in the history of the National Hockey League. And I had to look this up because I thought he was a disappointment with the Flyers. He actually scored 26 goals in 15-16 and 25 goals in 16-17. He's a 55, 60-point player. I actually didn't think he was doing that well with Philadelphia, but he was. And he's doing even better with the St. Louis Blues. I mean, he's off to an even better start with the St. Louis Blues. He's on pace to have a monster year for St. Louis, especially if they keep winning. And the funny thing is he doesn't even have them. Well, he does. He's tied for the most points on the team. Jaden Schwartz, who is his partner in crime there, 10 goals, 15 assists. Braden has 7 goals, 18 assists. He got 25 points in 20 games. He's 30 shy of his average, I guess you can say, and he's got 60 more games to go. I mean, and he's averaging more than a point per game right now. If he stays healthy, he's going to crush his personal stats. You know, I'm seeing the chat here. It's awesome points. You know, the weird thing is, and I said this before when we were talking about Ottawa moving to Quebec the other day, when Don Cherry came out and called out the National Hockey League and called out Gary Bettman and said, if Ottawa can't make downtown work, you got to send them to Quebec. Attendance is a small percentage of the National Hockey League revenue. I know it's crazy to think, but I'm telling you, I worked for the New York Islanders. I studied sports management in college. You know, I've been looking at this stuff for a really long time. Attendance, ticket sales, it's important. It becomes really important in the postseason. But it's season tickets that are a big deal to them, and the suites that are a big deal to them. Individual game tickets don't really matter all that much to the National Hockey League. So you can have nobody showing up at these games, and it doesn't really bother them all that much. It doesn't look good. And in Florida, it really doesn't look good. I mean, Eric, you're right, brother. I mean, it doesn't look good down there. They're announcing like, oh yeah, 11,000 people. You look around, there's barely 5,000 people in the building, and that's by counting all the guys handing out nachos too. I mean, they're counting everybody. They are just counting everybody. But it doesn't put a lot of money into the till, man. It doesn't. The TV money is the big part. The merchandising money is the big part. You know, the revenue sharing is a huge part of it. You know, parking is a big part of it. But the attendance, you know, people in the building, They will obviously prefer full buildings. They're going to make a lot more money that way. But you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised because if you notice how much the ticket price goes up in the playoffs, they can make up 5-7 games of crummy attendance with one playoff game. I mean, they can. They just can. They make it up in the boxes alone. And it's crazy. So do teams prefer that? Yeah, but believe me, attendance is a bigger deal to the media than it is to the rest of us. It's an indication of a weak market, of course. But as far as the money goes, it doesn't really matter all that much to them. It doesn't. It really doesn't. Now in Florida, it may matter a little bit more, but for the most part, it really doesn't really matter. In markets like Chicago, the Rangers, you see a couple empty seats there. Those seats are sold. It's nothing to worry about. Although I will say Detroit has been insanely low as far as attendance goes. Every game I see in Detroit, that new beautiful building they have, Little Caesars Arena, empty seats everywhere. Again, we were talking about this on the last show. I don't know if that's because the ticket prices went up or what the case is, but it seems crazy. A couple of housekeeping things here before we get on out of here. And thanks for all the participation so far. The chat's been killer tonight. And thanks. And listen, hey, spread the word. We literally just started this just 5 weeks ago when the season started. And want it to be a good little hockey community. So, keep spreading the word. If you're digging on the show, hit that share button on Facebook, retweet it on social media. We're at Hockey Talk Show. You can get links all at hockeytalkshow.com. Keep throwing it around. That's how we're going to grow. We're way over 350 in Facebook right now. Our podcast numbers are hugely encouraging. So we're growing really, really rapidly. I want to thank you guys for that. Cam Atkinson just signed a 7-year, $41 million deal with the Blue Jackets. It's about $1.5 million raised for him each season. He was making $3.5 million going in. He'll make just over $5 million now. Smart move for the Blue Jackets. I like Cam Atkinson. I tend to like the smaller guys. 6th round draft pick. And not only is he an integral part of this team now, but before they got good the last year or so, he was a really, really integral part of this franchise. Goal scorer. He's got that fight to him. The Edmonton Oilers could use a player like this. The Edmonton Oilers could use a Cam Atkinson or a Johnny Gaudreau, a Matt Zuccarello, a little engine that could. These guys tend to try no matter what. They pull their hearts out. 5.8, so almost a $6 million player, and he certainly deserves it. 233 points in 397 games. That's better than a point every other game in his career. And with Panarin there now, he just continues to be an integral part of the offense. And I love his game. I think it's a great signing for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Of course, they could have signed him back in July, but they waited to get it done, and there's nothing wrong with that. Department of Player Safety came out and issued Luke Witkowski a 10-game suspension. Rightfully so. You'll remember the brawl that we talked about on the last show. If you didn't see it, go back to the last show on Facebook or YouTube. You'll see it there. We talked about it right off the top. Detroit and Calgary, formerly the Calgary Flames, will soon be the Houston Flames. They went at it, fisticuffs and everything. Witkowski was brought off the ice. He got off the ice. He maybe went 4 or 5 feet before he came back on the ice for some pushing and shoving because Tkachuk threw a little slash. It was a light tap, but it was a slash nonetheless down to his skates there. And he came back on the ice, and you cannot do that. It explicitly says in the NHL rule book that if a player is told to get off the ice and they come back, that's a problem. Now, if he would have gotten into this altercation before he got off the ice, he's got a case now. Still not good if he was asked to leave, but that stuff happens all the time in the National Hockey League. So he would have had an argument there, but because his skates left the ice surface, it explicitly says in the rule books, if you're asked to leave and you leave the ice and you come back, automatic 10-game suspension. And that's the key there, automatic. The league has no leeway when they have automatic in the rule books. They can't. There's nothing they can do. And from what I understand, the league kind of took a look at it and was like, can we do anything here? Because did he really deserve it? Was he really like that was for like, you know, I think the rule was put in place. Like if you're told to leave and you get off and you go to the locker room and you're so hot, you come flying out back, then you deserve to be suspended, you know? But in this particular case, it was kind of one of those weird things. Would they address the rules in the offseason? They may take a look at that. But I don't know if you want to soften anything up on this kind of issue, because that kind of stuff comes back to bite you in the ass years later. You need to have those rules be as strict as you possibly can in order to avoid potentially worse situations. So Witkowski gets the 10 games that most of us figured that he would. Jeff Blashill, the coach of the Detroit, I almost said Detroit Tigers. How crazy is that? The coach of the Detroit Red Wings said to Helen St. James, who covers the team, quote, "I don't think the punishment fits the crime, but rule doesn't give department any ability to apply judgment. It's too bad. I hope there is punishment for starting the thing," which is what their player did. He's referring to Matthew Tkachuk and the little slash. And he's right. Matthew Tkachuk deserves some blame here. And by the way, Tkachuk is going for a hearing. If he didn't go for the hearing already today, Tkachuk is going for a hearing. And I forget who the other player was involved in this scrap, but he has a hearing as well regarding this whole thing. And so they're all going to be dealt with in due time. So Blashill has a point there. But you could see it in his language, but the rule doesn't give the department any ability to apply judgment, meaning that I think if the National Hockey League had their way with this one, they maybe would have given him 5 games, maybe 7, because it wasn't as harsh as the rule book plays that scenario out to be. But because it said automatic, National Hockey League's hands are kind of tied with this one. So nothing much that they can really do there on that situation. It is what it is. Witkowski will be missed, but Detroit has a lot of other problems that they have to deal with. So Tkachuk going for his hearing. As of the time we started the show, there was no penalty handed down just yet on Tkachuk. So we'll have to wait and see on that. I'm surprised too, maybe tomorrow. But we'll wait and see. Vegas Golden Knights have activated Malcolm Subban off of IR, so that'll be good for Vegas. They get their goaltending situation back in. And Radko Gudas, we'll talk about this. Radko's got a hearing, and this was a nasty one. Let's go to Winnipeg last night. Winnipeg on the power play here. As you'll see, Matthew Perreault comes in, and he comes over the top on Radko Gudas. And Radko doesn't like it, and Radko fiercely comes down with his stick on a slash. Let's watch the action here.
Continue to scramble. Now Gudas in there too, so it's 3-on-3. Now Gudas has his
boom right there.
Gudas with a chop.
Now don't worry, a little hard to see from that angle, but we'll come back to it. You'll see it on the replays.
Took his glove off to make sure he got
Take
that
a look
stick
from
back
here.
in his hand right there, and went on to play the remainder of that shift.
Perreault is getting a penalty as well.
And then both players.
There's Perreault, and there's the slash. Whew, right to the back of the head.
To the side of Perreault's head.
That's not good.
Here you take one more look.
Here it is from another angle.
Watch Perreault, 85
Here's Perreault coming in over the top of him.
Radko, and then ends up taking the helmet off of Radko.
Right there. Gudas doesn't like it. Bam, right down. Not a good situation. Not a good situation whatsoever. Now, here's what's interesting about this, too. Radko Gudas, my man, is a professional. He's a pro. He knows what he's doing, man. He is a pro at getting out there and agitating. He knows how to do it. He's off balance, and then he comes down. It's almost like his brain works in like hyper super fast, because he knows, and he did it. He said it afterwards. Well, I was just coming back. I was off balance. I didn't mean to. I was coming down. Look, I don't know if he didn't mean to. I don't know if it kind of just happened. It was a reaction. He was pissed. He did. I don't know what it is, but you can't do that. You can't whack a guy in the head. Now, was it as bad as McSorley and some of the other things that we've seen? you know, some of the other bad ones that we've seen over the years. No, it wasn't like Chris Simon, Ryan Hallwig bad attention to injure. It was more reactionary. But to me, that doesn't make a difference. You have got to control yourself no matter what. That's a good question, Andy. Prediction, 20 games. What's your prediction? Shoot me in the comments really quick. What's your prediction on that? Now that you guys just saw it, what do you think he's going to get there? Because you've got to make a statement. By the way, one of the worst ones I ever saw was Dave Brown on Tomas Sandstrom, 15 games. I made a note here. Chris Simon got 30 games for what he did to Ryan Hallwig back in the day, Isles Rangers. Where do you think this sort of a move falls? The problem is I don't know if this in a regular scenario is 30 games, but because it's Radko Gudas, that guy's a thug and he has priors. Dude's got priors. And I think player safety, and well, I know player safety takes that into account. So I think they're going to come down with a significant suspension here. What it is, if I had to give a prediction, Andy, yours is 20. Eric says 10. Boy, I hate to split the difference on this, but 15 seems like kind of where you want to be at. But I would guess, I wouldn't be surprised at 20. The other thing is he does have it was unintentional argument, which I know the NHLPA is going to counter with. So the NHL might overshoot themselves a little bit, say something like 22, 23, knowing that he'll appeal and they'll have to come back down to reality of a 16, 17, 18 game suspension. But he's got to get something that is far too awful to just let go. You just can't have players running around doing this. And by the way, this is coming from the guy that loved the brawl the other night in Detroit and Calgary. Like, it was great. That was fights, and meeting it out on your own is one thing. Taking a cheap shot to the head, especially when they're trying to avoid that kind of a thing, is entirely another. And you can, I mean, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing for several reasons. He knew he was at. Maybe he didn't intend on hitting him in the head, but he definitely intended on coming down and making contact because he was mad that Perreault came over the top of him and was on top of his helmet and his head. But I'll tell you how he knew. You can see he knew he did it, and the reaction of the referee. He knew. Referee puts his hands up, that could be anybody. But when you commit the foul and you see the ref and you react, that is a dead sign of a guilty conscience. He knew what he did, and he tried to make it look unintentional, which is the sign of a real pro that knows how to play dirty. But that's not the kind of pro that most people want on their team. You know, I don't know if he gets the Bertuzzi treatment. That Bertuzzi one was super bad. But he is definitely going to get something out of this, and he certainly does deserve something significant. He really deserves something significant. Not great for the Philadelphia Flyers, who, by the way, continue to try and figure out their gear. They're sitting 2 slots out of a playoff position. They're actually 2 points out of the wild card, but Rangers and Detroit in front of them, Carolina hot on their heels, Boston right behind them, and so is Montreal, by the way, as most of the East is still pretty much in the mix. But 3-4-3 over their last 10 games. Certainly not impressive play whatsoever from Philadelphia. But here's the thing with the Philadelphia Flyers. You can't count them out if 28's in the lineup. Giroux is just too good. You know, he can turn it on at any point. And I love Wayne Simmons. You know, it's funny. When Edmonton went out and got Milan Lucic to come in and protect McDavid, I liked the move, but I thought to myself at the time, boy, if they had a shot at Wayne Simmons, how much better that would be. Could you imagine Simmons and McDavid on a line together? That's a thing of beauty, man. Because Simmons has the toughness and the speed and the scoring touch. You put speed and scoring touch and toughness on a line with Connor McDavid, now you are talking, my friends. Now you are talking. That is a lethal combination. Melissa on Twitter. We are there at Hockey Talk Show on Twitter, at Hockey Talk Show. Of course, you can reach us at hockeytalkshow.com. She says that Bettman getting tough on Calgary and Ottawa relocation situations is Bettman trying to destroy non-American hockey. I would imagine, Melissa, that you are from Canada. Yes, you are. I would love to have you call in at some point, Melissa. We're wrapping up the show tonight, but you can certainly chime in the next time we're on. We send out notifications on Facebook and YouTube. The number is 631-438-1768. I would love to get a Canadian's perspective on this. I don't know if Gary Bettman is trying to ruin Canadian hockey. I think Gary Bettman knows that he's got to have a certain amount of franchises in Canada, and he has a certain amount of franchises in America, and I don't think he wants to waver from that. I think that if the National Hockey League, where's football at, 34 teams, or are they at 32? I think if sports continues to grow in popularity, and by the way, you know what's interesting? Streaming, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, I talk about this a lot on my morning show here on Long Island in New York. The entertainment landscape has changed so much. Everybody is watching things on demand, HBO Go or Hulu or whatever. Even if you're watching stuff not on those services, a lot of the times people are recording them and watching them later. So they're skipping through the commercials. 32 in the NFL. Thanks, buddy. The NFL is going to be at 34, by the way. They're just the biggest league in the world. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the NFL gets to 36 one day. One day. And here's why. Because TV money is such a big deal. And with all these streaming services, nobody watches commercials anymore. Commercials on television are such a waste of businesses' money. It's not even funny. The only place they're good is at the Super Bowl or the Oscars, or, you know, sports have become so important in the landscape of entertainment because it's the only place where you can get somebody to tune in that they can't fast forward through the commercials. It's the only place. If you ask most Americans, and I'd wonder, or most people, I should say, and I'd wonder what your response is here. And again, if you're listening on the podcast later on, shoot me a Twitter at Hockey Talk Show on Twitter. Drop the message on Facebook. We're facebook.com/Hockey Talk Show. Let me know, how much do you actually watch live television? I'd bet it's not a lot. Maybe when you're going to bed, Tonight Show or something like that. Outside of sports, how much live television are you really watching? Because most people aren't watching that much. Sports is one of the last few properties you can go to that you actually have to watch a commercial. That's why, by the way, you're seeing a lot more of it. Those little 10, 15-second commercials in between pitches in baseball games or in between plays at football, you're going to start to see that in the NHL and the NBA too. You're going to definitely see that. But it's one of those things where there's a lot of money now in sports properties are extraordinarily valuable. So those prices will continue to go up. We saw big TV deals from the NHL in America. Then they surpassed that with the Canadian TV deals. And then the NBA came out and blew them out of the water with their TV deal. So in 8 years or whatever the TV deal is done for the NHL, they're going to really cash in. And what's going to happen with that? More franchises, more TV money, more money for everybody. So I think the NFL, the NHL, they're all going to wind up expanding sooner or later. And I think you can wind up seeing more teams in Canada if that is the case. If the NHL can get to a place where there's 34 franchises, I wouldn't be surprised to see one more in Canada. But you got to figure out Calgary and Ottawa. You got to have healthy franchises there. You have to. It's weird to say because although Arizona and Florida have been really embarrassing, the fact that the Ottawa Senators can't sell out a playoff game is extraordinarily embarrassing. Extraordinarily embarrassing. I mean, bad. And it's because Florida and Arizona are non-traditional markets and hockey is the pastime of Canada. It's just worse. I'm sorry. It's just worse. I actually don't want to see the Calgary Flames leave. I'm with Gary Bettman, not in everything, but in the sense that I'd rather see the National Hockey League expand than have to relocate. because I'm a fan of the league. I don't want to see them relocate. But Melissa, thanks for your tweet. I'd love to have you on so we can talk in real time on the call-in line here at 631-438-1768. It is 8 o'clock in the East. I said I was only going to do a 15-minute show tonight. It's been close to an hour. I have sushi that is getting cold, or getting warm, actually, now that I think about it. It goes the other way. Andy thinks Bettman is too smart for that. They'll add before they take away. Yeah, I do. I'm with you. I don't think that Gary Bettman wants to be the commissioner that let the Ottawa Senators and the Calgary Flames move, even if Ottawa winds up moving to Quebec. I don't think he wants to be that guy. I think he wants to be the commissioner that added a whole ton of hockey franchises, saw the league revenues go up, saw the players' salary go up. He wants to do a good job, and I understand that. But he had a significant comment. If you're just joining us, you could watch the replay in a couple minutes. It'll be live on Facebook and YouTube, where he left the door open and said, at some point, ownership has to look at what options it may have. And he's talking directly to the Calgary Flames more so than the Ottawa Senators. Because if they can't get back to the table and start talking with the city of Calgary, you just can't have the Calgary Flames floundering up there. If they need an arena, they need an arena. That's all they need. You got to do it. I know it hurts. I know it's this. I know it's that. But honestly, times are good. The economies are booming. You know, North American economies are booming right now. Now's the time. Believe me, the recessions are coming. They're coming. The crash is coming. Might as well get it started now and try and sneak it in under the wire before that happens. And when push comes to shove, I don't think anybody in Calgary, hockey fan or not, which are there non-hockey fans in Canada? Probably 3 or 4. I don't think anybody wants to see them lose their team. I don't think anybody wants to see them lose their team. And Calgary is good. I mean, remember when Calgary made the run in the red jerseys and they were the biggest selling thing in the area? I mean, it was massive. So the support is there. I honestly don't know what's going on in Calgary. Maybe we'll get into it more in an upcoming show. Awesome talking with you guys tonight. Chat was killer. Thanks to everybody for being here. Share this around on social media if you can. Let people know we're here. We're building something and we're going to be here for the long term. Live call-in show, live tweets, live messages, a place where we can come and talk hockey at any time. Big trade happens, we turn on the Hockey Talk Show. Big game in the playoffs, we'll turn on the Hockey Talk Show. I don't care. We're not like all the other big networks. We can control this whenever we want to. That's the beautiful part about Facebook and YouTube and social media right now. So that's what's really cool about this. I look forward to continuing to talk hockey with you guys. Next live show we have planned, we're doing Monday through Friday for now, with the occasional hopping in on another one when we can. So if we can't get one going this weekend, because we're trying to shoot some other stuff that we want to put on the channels, that won't be a live show. That'll be a little different. So if we don't do that this weekend, we will see you here Monday at some point. Again, don't just like our page. Make sure you're following on Facebook so that you're getting the notifications. That's a super, super important part of it. I can't even stress how super important that is. Can't even tell you how super important that is. Bam, following, see first. Get all notifications. You got to make sure you're getting all the notifications. Because if you're not, you're going to miss out when the show goes live. Bam, right there. All notifications on all posts. And the same thing goes for YouTube. You got to get on over there and smash that bell. Because without the bell, even though you're subscribed to a channel, you won't be notified when we go live. So that is super important for you guys if you want to continue to chime in on the Hockey Talk Show. It was a blast talking hockey with you guys. You guys just set me up for a killer weekend. I want to thank you for that. And I will see you guys